Yeah. I was walking near the Olympic-sized pool, Rob, and then I noticed that there was something in the bottom of the pool. So Andre, as you know, I'm an avid swimmer. So I jumped down the pool, grabbed this buoy, and in that buoy there was a note, and it said something on it, and I was reading it. It must have been a note from Vanis. I don't know if you know the history of Vanis, but he's a hooligan who's somehow constantly throwing stuff at my palatial estate, Andre. Whether it's in one of the wings, the west wing, the east wing, the pool.
Stu lives in a glass house.
The note said, but we did nothing, absolutely nothing that day. And what can I say? What the hell am I doing drinking in LA? I got a fever for the flavor. And all of a sudden someone yelled, BAM! In the background. And I was like, oh, wow, it's all linked up. I don't know what's going on. Anyways, welcome to the Heroes World Quarantine Podcast. I'm your host, CK. That is the bit that keeps on giving. Vanis.
Andre has no idea what's happening.
None. I think you guys are giving this bit more legs than it deserves.
It's never going to stop because Vanis will always be throwing obscure music at me. And you'll have to determine if you can figure out. Part of the game in the podcast is, can you figure out the song that is? I'd like to know if you, the people out there, put your guess in the comments below, and you'll be able to figure out what song it is. Welcome to the podcast. We are here to talk about the long-awaited show, Halo, on Paramount Plus, or Plus, as some people would say. It is
that?
French people.
I wish I could divulge the chat that Andre and Rob and myself, we've been talking about Halo for like a year, 2 years now, but frankly, it's probably best that we just burn that thread to the ground. It's been highs, it's been lows. We were excited. We're like, oh my God, why? Should I gouge my eyes out? They're doing what now? Wait, Steven Spielberg's in it? Are they spending money? So these are all the things we're going to talk about today. There's a lot of stuff we want to hit by. Andre, as our resident Halo super fan, the rest of three of us are, we played the game, right? I think we've all played. Three of us have played the game.
I'm
Halo
like
1, I think. Minimum.
You know in Fight Club when Ed Norton would attend those meetings and they'd call him a tourist, whatever. I'm like that. I'm like, I played the multiplayer for Halos and I never touched the story mode, so I've been kind of like watching from afar. So
okay, Rob, you probably played Halo 1 back in the day.
Yeah, I played 1,
played
2, 3, and 4. I never played
OTS.
I never played Drop Shock or Drop Zone
ODST?
or whatever it was
ODST.
called. ODST, and I didn't play. I think there was a Halo 5, but that was for the last generation. I up until the 360, I was playing Halo.
Okay, Andre played it all. He knows it all, so that's a given. So we're gonna jump straight into it. Not to give spoilers, but I'm gonna go straight to John because John, as the person who knows nothing about this, who was hyped about this show, episode 1 drop. It did the fun that Andre and me hated to do, where it's like, don't give us an episode that's 42 minutes. This was a long one. This was like a 58-minute episode. Good or bad, I don't know. We'll find out momentarily. But this was a lot of episodes. Oh crap! I forgot to introduce everyone. So wow. I'm so interested to talk about Halo. First off, let me introduce the panel. Both the owners and proprietors of Heroes World, that Mr. John Ho and Andre. Say hello.
hello.
And Rob, Prince of Mischief Godet.
Hey, yeah, how's it going?
I'm so excited to talk about Halo, clearly, that I forgot the format of the show. All right, John, jump back to you. Give us your initial thoughts of Halo, a show that you know nothing about. Besides, I think that you learn how to teabag people in multiplayer. I think that's the only.
we played a hell of a lot of multiplayer, like when you could just couch play before you could go online on the Xbox. And me and my friends would literally play every day after school. So if there were tournaments running back then, we might have had a small chance at doing something. And then all these online kids came along and just destroyed everybody's faces unless you live it 24/7.
I can vouch for John's prowess because there was a time when we went to Andre's palatial estate and we had a Halo LAN party where we were playing on the upstairs wing. I was playing with Andre on the upstairs and people were playing on the downstairs area.
Yeah,
that was a really fun time. So
you throw LAN cords like out the window and you down.
I'm gonna drop the cord. I can vouch that Andre and John have game.
Yeah.
Back then.
Yeah. 20 years ago.
Oh,
Is that how old Halo is?
I think that was probably 10 years ago, to be fair.
No, Halo, the first one was 2003.
No, but when we played at Audrey's place, that had to be like 10 years ago. Anyways.
No, I feel like
dude, it was Halo like Halo 1 and 2. Man, so it's going back 20 years and 18 years, man. It's crazy.
Okay.
2001. It came out November 15th, 2001.
Let's not get too deep into it because I don't want to feel that bad. But yeah, so fun times. Like I said, I'm a tourist when it comes to the story mode. Like I whenever I play multiplayer, there's no story in multiplayer. So I'm coming into this show with zero expectations. It did give me, if you guys want to feel really old, I don't know if you guys remember a show called Captain Power in the Soldiers of the Future. It gave me a vibe of that, but in a good way. I think for some reason I'm just in this headspace where I'm willing to watch stuff that just kind of like that transports me back. So this show does kind of feel like it's a little dated. I don't know when they originally produced this. I think it's been sitting in the hopper for like probably a year or two when people actually worked on it. When I talked to people who worked on the show or whatever. But it has like an old school feel to it, but I kind of dig it. There is a lot of VFX going on, but overall, me going in with no expectations. I don't know if we're going to talk spoilers yet, but there's something that happens towards the end of the episode, and I was perfectly fine with it. I was okay with this.
All right. I'm waiting for Andre to go to the end. Rob, what are your initial thoughts about spoilers?
I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it. There are moments that I quite enjoyed as a guy who played those first 4 games for me. Like, they only played the 4 games. But there's a lot in this that makes me just bang my head because it just falls into the typical tropes. And so I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. But I'm committed to watch more episodes.
Oh, okay.
Wow, that's quite a rousing review, Rob.
That's that's what you call a lukewarm review, I think.
Yeah.
You asked for my initial thoughts.
All right, I understand. Andre, as the resident Halo, out of curiosity, I wanted to ask you the ranking of the franchises. I know you like Mass Effect. I know you like Halo. I know you like Star Wars. Like, where does the Halo game rank in your pantheon of properties?
Ooh,
because that you have loves, and I want to know. We never say pick your favorite child, but you have to pick a favorite child.
So I think Halo is definitely one of my I would probably say it's in my top 5, or was in my top 5 franchises. It's such a big world that starts in this one game, but like I dove in like from novels and the animation and apparel and statues and everything, like it's something that I really consumed a lot of because I did enjoy it. And fun fact, when the Xbox first came out, I bought Halo and Project Gotham Racing, and John got Dead or Alive, and I can't remember what the other game was. And I gave John my copy of Halo. I'm like, I can't play this game. John, you take it, because I couldn't do the double thumbstick. I couldn't.
This was the infancy of the first-person shooter on a controller,
on a console. Yeah. And John played the first couple levels, and he's like, "No, Andre, give it a try. This is really, really good." So if John didn't do that, I would have not played Halo. And boy, was I glad I did, because probably 3 levels in, once you actually got to the ring, I was like, wow, this is phenomenal. It was just such a great experience. So I was all in on Halo. Compared to like Mass Effect and Star Wars, it's going to obviously fall after that. But I definitely read more Halo novels than Mass Effect because they made more. So I have done quite a bit. On to the show. Unfortunately, there was so many things said, like this kind of like it dragged on, and who was attached to it, when's it coming out, what time period is it going to be, that I will say my initial thoughts were like why are they doing this to it? But I think I'm almost like Rob here. Is I'm like, I didn't hate all of it, but I think I hated enough of it. But there was a couple moments that if these guys get their heads out of their ass, it might actually be a decent series.
That might not be difficult, considering that they may or may not be wearing helmets.
we're going to get to that because, as we know, the video game community is very, very kind, very forgiving, and don't hold grudges. So
no way, they're not. They're completely not that.
Oh,
Stu, what about you? I think you were.
Wait, I'm checking my notes. Wait, that's incorrect information. Yeah, I think if you are a Halo fan, the first 10 minutes is really all you need to watch, and then after that, you're like, just pretend the rest of it doesn't exist for now. I think the first 10 minutes really gives you all the Halo that you would want in a including the first person perspective, all the things you want to see, the sounds, all the shields regenerating, like all the weapons, the guns, like everything in that first 10 minutes could have been just a trailer at basically at back when they used to do gaming conventions where E3 where they'd be like, oh, let's do trailer for thing, and then Master Chief is just doing stuff. Like that could have been it. And then all the world building came afterwards. And I'm like, man, I don't know whether I wanted to the gun stuff in the beginning or the gun stuff at the end, because really once that ended, I'm like, oh my God, I want to sit through all this exposition and then not another gunfight. So that's not, I'm not going to spoil too much, but that's the kind of pacing. So if you're watching it and you're like, oh, is there going to be more? No, that's pretty much it. So we're going to go into full spoilers, but John, what do you give this out of 10?
Oh, so episode 1 out of 10, I give it a 7 out of 10.
Rob?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with John. I might give it I'll go 7. I was between 6.5 and a 7, but I guess I'll give it a 6.5.
You son of a bitch. I just want to be affiliated with your ranking, John.
Andre?
Yeah, since I didn't hate all of it and I was able to actually finish watching it, like I didn't rage quit partway through, I'd probably give it a 5 out of 10. And a lot of that is because, like you said, Stu, they had the actual sound effects of the shield powering up. The warthog looked like, the warthog, the pelican and the condor. Like it looks like Halo, right? But as you're talking, the exposition and world building and stuff, it's just like, this is awful. Like anything that wasn't visual, you're like, how do you stumble with 20 plus years of content and you couldn't write anything half decent? It was yeah.
I give this show a 6. And yeah, I'm kind of in the middle of everyone. It had some moments, but then I have to Andre's point, ding it for a lot of the, like when George Lucas does it, I'd give him a pass because it's George Lucas. That's not his forte of writing dialogue. He wrote it, he directed it, he did visualize it. He's doing everything. It's one of those jokes where written by George Lucas, directed by George Lucas, visual effects by George Lucas.
Red Tails. Excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah. So like I give that a pass. This, I'm like, to Andre's point, you have so many, this is a Steven Spielberg, Amblin production. You have all these writers, you have a writer's room, you have books, you have the video game, you have content that you couldn't elevate the material. That point, not to ruin the show, but there's a cliche of like, oh, if we're not acting like humans, like, are we still humans? And I'm like, when you hear that on a show and you're like, did they just say, oh, okay. All right, let's keep on going. Like it was just, there's some lines in the show that I'm like, man, like are we sure that this wasn't written by a robot? Like, did Alexa write it in her spare time?
It was CG generated from an AI.
Yeah, like I felt like it was instead of the monkey typewriters, it was Alexa typewriters, 1,000 of them writing to the ends of time, write every story.
It was the autofill. It's like action scene. We need an autofill here.
Yeah. So okay, we're gonna go to spoilers because I think we really need to go in. So you haven't seen Halo, disembark, leave. If you have, great, welcome. If you haven't watched it, you just want to hear us rant, let us begin because I think it's gonna get real rough real fast. John, you've alluded to it already.
Said, I don't think there's something that can be particularly spoiled in theory for the show either. So even if there's no big reveal.
Helmet.
Well, there is.
The helmet.
Okay, yeah. So I'll open with that. Master Chief takes off his helmet. Obviously, in multiplayer, that has no relevance to me, right? But in the story, I think it's a big deal. I don't know if it's a whole Judge Dredd thing or whatever. I was fine with it, but I'm a little biased because I actually quite like this actor, Pablo Schreiber or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, you really like him. You know his name.
Yeah. Whoa.
Whoa.
I've seen him around.
Don't besmirch the brother of Sabretooth, all right? Liv Schreiber, who also does the voice.
Yeah.
Who? Sorry.
Is he really?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. He was also born on a commune in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Yeah.
And also his brother does all the voices for the ESPN, Creed, all the like two bodies. That's Liv Schreiber as well, who does all the voices of the. He's an incredible actor who does like Born and Bred and it's like this fighter comes together. So yeah, it's a prolific family, including that terrible show that was on. Rob, what was that show that Liv Schreiber was on for a while with John Voight? It's escaping me. Where he plays a fixer.
Whatever.
Ray Donovan.
Yes, Ray Donovan. Thank you. All right, so yeah, he takes off the helmet. Yes.
Yeah, he takes off the helmet. I like this actor. I will say, when you're wearing full out armor and you walk around with your helmet off, you look like a goof. So hopefully they figure out some way to balance it, right? Because he's like wearing this big thing and then he's not wearing his helmet. I'm like, is he gonna put that shit back on? Like he's literally just gonna. So I hope episode 2 doesn't open with him with his helmet off. Because like I do like the costumes. I really like the warthogs and all the tech. So I think the show looks fantastic. Even the aliens when they whoever the Covenant or whatever the hell they called when they drop down, they look crazy.
Here's the thing, John. I think, and we'll get to John, Rob and Andre one second. We all understand Master Chief shouldn't take off the helmet, but if he was going to take off the helmet, at least there was quote unquote a reason to de-escalate if you're trusted. So I'm like, fine, if you're gonna do it, I guess that's an explanation rather than like I have to take off my helmet just for the sake it's hot in here. Like even the fact that when he was like, are you gonna take off your helmet to eat? He's like, no, I'm not hungry. I don't see anything that's worthwhile. I'm like, they really pushed it to the end. So I'm glad they didn't just do a cheeky like, I just take off my helmet for the sake of taking off this helmet.
Yeah, and they could have held it. They could have waited like 4 episodes in, then they do make a big hoopla of it. But they opened up. They went, you know what? He's taking off his helmet in this series. If you want to check out, then check out. At least they did that. But yeah, I like I said, it reminded me of Captain Power with the kind of weird armor and stuff like that. Almost a little bit like that. I don't know if you remember that Kurt Russell movie Soldier with Jason Scott Lee and stuff like that. It was kind of along those lines. Man, those kids got eviscerated. I was like, they're really blowing up kids in this episode. But everything I think looked pretty good when everything started taking off at the end and stuff. You're like, whoa, this is pretty crazy looking show. So I will say Silver Team sucks at clearing the area because like I'm like, how did you not notice a big guy just murdering another guy? Like, what the hell is your problem? But everything to do with Master Chief and like the way he moved around, he was doing stuff that we do in the video game, like jumping around, tossing the grenade, running in. The HUD kind of gives you that little feeling of you're actually playing Halo. So I dug all that. And then I think there was one more thing I wanted to mention. What was it? No, I think that's it. Well, I like the other guys, his team. I don't know when they started popping up in the Halo game. I'm pretty sure they weren't in like the first 2 or 3 of them. So I do like the addition of those characters and and the fact that they're kind of on his team, so we don't just have like a rogue guy and these guys are hunting him. I kind of like that was set up. But overall, yeah, I'm happy, but I'm not like super anxious to see the next episode. I was just kind of like, that was fun. Let's go.
Rob, your thoughts?
I'm just going to start off by saying, during the course of me watching this show, all I could think about is, man, I wish we got to see what Neil Blomkamp was going to do with the Halo movie, because, man, that guy is so talented, and I feel like he's more known now for projects that just never get off the ground, like his version of Aliens, his Halo, like all the previs stuff we saw for the Halo were like, oh my God, like I would have loved to have seen that. So that's kind of like the drawback of watching this. It reminds me of watching the Joss Whedon version of Justice League in the theater, going, I often wonder what Zack Snyder would have done with this and how his version turned out, minus the Icelandic singers. So, yeah, like we've all touched upon the fact that there's a lot in this where you're like, oh, cool, you've got the sound of the shields. The Covenant look okay. It could have looked a little bit better, but it looked all right. It weren't that bad. I had some nitpicks with the way that Master Chief did move around when he was trying to be fast. It looked like either they were speeding up the film to make it look like he was quick, or they were doing some CGI trickery. It just didn't look natural. The kicking of the guns, so these are like just little nitpick things. But when you get to like the crux of the story, like I think the idea was interesting to start off with this colony, and they're talking about is it USMC, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, it's a propaganda issue. Like there's a massive amount of distrust against the USMC, which is, you can say it's, we're very familiar with a lot of individuals who have a distrust of misinformation in today's modern age. And so I thought that was an interesting approach to take. And then, as you said, Stu, that first 10 minutes, like that battle scene, it was phenomenal. Yeah, people got blown away. Like that set a certain expectation for what this episode was going to be. And unfortunately, they blew their wad after that 10 minutes, because you're like, and what? And then for me, it really falls off with that one lone survivor who is now, I guess, the baby Yoda of the Halo series, where it's now another straggler or a lost puppy that's with your main protagonist. And I feel like you're falling on tropes that just weren't needed. Like, I don't understand why we have to have, he is now the protect. Like, I know you guys are big fans of The Witcher, but we see it like, it's the same as The Witcher, where you've got this young person or whatever that now you have to take care of, right? Like,
Rob, let me tell you about this book called Save the Cat. It's a very important book in screenwriting where you constantly talk about saving a cat and just replace the cat.
Episode 2, she's gonna get like blown up.
A damsel in distress. This is how it works. You know?
Like, so, but to that point of having her, like, I know you had made the comment, and probably maybe tongue in cheek or whatever, saying if you're going to have Master Chief remove his helmet, what better way to do it, I guess, than to kind of earn her trust. That being said, there's also an alternate reality where at the very last episode of the series, where she's like, I never even got to know who you were to thank you for rescuing me or whatever, and he removes it. Cheesy, sure, but I think that probably would have been a lot more impactful than doing it, because he's telling her, your bullets have no effect on my armor. She should have just fired off some shots. And he's like, I told you. Like, that would have been a lot more enjoyable than him removing the helmet. And I pulled up the actress's name, Shabana Azimi, who plays the Admiral Marge, whatever her name is. I gotta tell you, I'm sure she's a nice woman, an actress, but maybe she's doing a really good job at her role, but I couldn't stand her. I was so irritated with the delivery of and her role altogether. And so when you got to the human, parts of this show with the doctor and everybody else, and it just felt very confusing how quick they were just to cut ties with Master Chief. They're like, he's not listening to us? Fuck this. Pull the ripcord. Let's cut his oxygen out. We're out. Like, wait a minute. This is supposed to be, you have said he is the best of our, of all humans, of all of our race. He's a savior of humanity. And he is a top Spartan of all Spartans. And you're like, oh, he's not listening to us. Let's knock him the fuck out. And like, there's a problem with him. Like, and yet there was an explanation saying he interacted with this piece of the Covenant. Like, this is interesting. And this admiral's like, I want none of it. I want to listen to it. You're not listening. And I felt like it felt very B movie or like old school sci-fi show where it was just like, you're creating this tension for no real reason, just to have a subplot. And so that's why I'm very conflicted on my review of the show, because there is a lot to enjoy out of it visually. And then there's a lot where you're like, ugh. And the last thing I'm going to say is the set pieces. The sets look great until it didn't. And mostly like the bridge where everybody was on, or I guess it's the lab where the doctor, she was working. It was very Apple Store, but you could tell it was all green screen. The practical sets, like the inside of the Pelican where the girl was being held, looked like the video game. It had like the cross beams and everything else. So this whole show is a juxtaposition unto itself for its own faults. And it's mind boggling. And yet I will continue to watch because I have paid my $6.99 for Paramount.
Wow.
You gotta watch something on there.
That's great. All right, Andre, enlighten us. Give us your thoughts, because I know you have some.
Yeah, you know what? I think the biggest struggle here is, who are they trying to get to watch this show? Are they trying to get the 20-year Halo veteran gamer, or the kid who's like 10 or 12 now and is allowed to play Halo and doesn't know all the history of Halo? Are they trying to get me, the veteran Halo? And watching the show, I don't know who their intended audience is. Like John mentioned, there's a lot of violence towards kids. You know, then it gets boring. There's too much.
Most I've seen ever.
Yeah, it's an hour-long episode, and we all would love if the Marvel movies did an hour-long episode that was paced correctly. But I think this one suffers from pacing issues and character issues. There's no character introductions, right? They say the name, the character comes in. Oh, I'm going to bring Miranda Keyes. Is that okay? Am I supposed to know that name? Well, I know that character, right? And then her father comes in, and it's not the same. You know, they don't have the same positions as in the game. So, like, again, I don't know who it's for. The dialogue in the scenario is just horrible. It's almost like it's a little bit better than Captain Power, but Captain Power was aimed at kids. This is could be tackling some really serious issues, but it's written very, very poorly. Like, this girl just saw her whole colony wiped out, but she's got enough foresight to say, oh yeah, I'll videotape me saying that it was the Master Chief killing everybody and blah, blah, blah. Really? You're not going to shed a tear? Like, you could actually help these other colonies? You know, like, it just, and like Rob said, they got to the point of, yeah, let's take the Master Chief down right away. It took 5 video games for them to say, oh, the Master Chief is not obeying orders. Let's send another team to go get him. And those guys knew that they were going to be hated for going against humanity's, biggest hero. Sure, at this point, he's not the biggest hero, but if he's him and his team are the only Spartans to fight the Covenant, press the off switch. Don't take his oxygen down. You just lock his armor, land the Purd, kill the witness, and everything else is good. But they tried, and they said, early on, they're like, hey, let's show that the Master Chief doesn't obey orders, right? He tells his team, you guys go hijack the ship, and I'll take the prisoner back, or I'll take the object back. And then Halsey talks to the team and's like, hey, do whatever you can to protect the Master Chief. Well, the one thing that you should know from Halo, if you've played any of the games, is that he's a military man. He follows orders. That's all he's ever known. So for the first episode, for this guy to be like, yeah, I better take off these surveillance things and not obey this order. It's just
jiggle this screen and disconnect.
Yeah, it's just bonkers, right? So the producers say they want to tell a story about the character and they want to give Master Chief a character. and this survivor just tells this sob story. Oh, I met you before you killed my mother, and he would have been like, yeah, that was orders. You know, I know what I'm doing. He's not going to be like, oh, now I feel bad for you, and I'm gonna save your life. Not buying it. Nobody's buying it. Again, maybe 2 episodes in, if they had to take a long journey. And
Andre, you forgot the record. You forgot the powerful words. As like, maybe they should listen to a guy like you. It's like, I don't have the power vision. And she's like, oh, I listen to the top because they have the higher vision. He's like, but what about on the ground? Shouldn't you have it too? And he was like, right. I should. I'm like, that was all you needed to turn your opinion. Andre, do you not know that maybe you have the foresight? And you'd be like, oh, right. I would know him on the ground. I was like, oh, my
You've got the touch.
Yeah.
You've got the power.
Yeah. So
that was the dialogue tree. It's like, you go through it. Like, if that was in Mass Effect, you'd be like, I would just shoot you. Like, the dialogue tree.
Yeah. So true.
No, just get there.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the worst dialogue tree. Like, this is the one where, you know, it's the same. It's like, if we're not big, if we, you know, it's the same thing. The same.
It's just someone slamming the A button. Someone's like slamming the A button. Next. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Or LA Noir, where you're like, which button should I press? I don't know. Just get out of here. For my notes, I don't care. Just cross it off. I will drive through the streets again. Sorry, Andre. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's you know, like just the reasoning, but behind it, the choices. You know, the Covenant thing. We didn't really touch on this, but seeing a human in the Covenant, like at first I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting, and I'm like, no, it's not. This is dumb as hell. Like, again, 20 years of gaming, of stories in the gaming universe and novels. Like, I've got a stack of Halo novels here. Not once was there anything like that. So I'm like, oh, you guys want to inject something new. Okay. But why? And that's, to me, that's going to be my biggest problem with these shows and adaptations and stuff. These people, these showrunners clearly think they can do a better job than 20 years of people and bringing in writers for games and movies and you know, everything, comics, novels, and they think that they could come up with a better idea instead of adapting something. And like I said, it's just it was just those parts of it were just too lame, you know. And I really feel that it's a bad foot to start off on. Like, you know, you start your thing, you show how badass the Master Chief is, but then you show, oh, this guy doesn't follow any orders. There's no Cortana. And now you're like wondering, how the hell are they going to get Cortana? And is Cortana a clone? Like, what's this clone thing? Like, why is it so different? Like
she's baking.
You know, like I honestly don't. I just don't get the need to make these changes. John mentioned that he knows this actor and likes this actor. I don't recognize him, but I'd be like, you know, that's the last face I expected to see with the Master Chief. Like, he took it off and he just looked like an average dude. Like, this guy's got to be military through and through. Give him a clean shaven head. He's augmented, so maybe he's got, like, you know, cyborg scars because, you know, they enhanced his bones or something. But he just looked like, oh, I haven't shaved and I've got a cut. I'm like, dude, your whole life is military. You're not going to look scruffy, you know, like that's like, so I think a lot of those things, like, I don't know, to be honest with you, I don't know if I would have ever liked who they showed us what the Master Chief looked like, but I think this was the weirdest one. And I will say one contradictory thing, or is, you know, I did really like the fact that they tried to have like a multicultural ensemble. Like, I really did notice there's a lot of different ethnicities playing roles and stuff. And I thought that was really cool. But I will say the, you know, and I'm not knocking the actors, so please don't misconstrue it to that. But the Captain Keyes and Miranda Keyes, you know, they changed their ethnicity and they're black and she's mixed or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's cool that you wanted to add some diversity. But I think I'm tired of them adding diversity to like secondary characters all the time. If everything is up for grabs and up for change, then why don't you change a major character? Like, what if, I'm not saying, but what if the Master Chief took off his helmet and he was black or he was Asian, right? Like, if you're going to take characters that are established in one thing and change their race, why every time do they do it? Is it always, oh, well, we're going to keep the main guy and the secondary guy. So we're going to have Chief and Halsey for sure. They're going to be, the race that they were. But then other things, and they do it all the time. Like they did it in Doctor Strange with Baron Mordo. They did it in the Daredevil movie with Michael Clark Duncan and stuff like that. And I'm just like, at this point, guys, if everything is up for grabs and you're willing to change everything, then put everything on the board. Don't just save it for anybody but the main two characters can be identity swap or whatever. So I don't know. Maybe I sound juxtaposition because I'm happy to see diversity in the cast, but not where it is. But yeah, it just didn't feel like Halo in those parts to me. Like everything that was not the Chief, like Rob mentioned, the set of the bridge, yeah, it was all green screen. It didn't feel anything. And the cool scene with all those soldiers at the end, it just looked like it was CG different parts. It looked like there's just way too many of them running around. Didn't look that great. So
it looked cheap CG, not the volume that's the Disney.
Yeah, I think it would have looked better if it was only 30 guys instead of them trying to have 150 guys or whatever it was, right?
You guys, you could play a really cool game at the beginning of the episode where all those young people got blown away. You could actually think that those were the scooter racers from Mandalorian, from Boba Fett, and that actually
Get this in.
You're like,
That's
oh,
horrible, Rob.
cool.
That's horrible.
It's funny because I look back to the Halo series, the web series, Halo 4 Forward on
Forward Onto Dawn.
And they used Master Chief kind of like Baba Yaga, where he only showed up at the very end and then he kicked everyone's ass. And you're like, yes, it's the perfect usage of Master Chief. Like he's a myth, a legend. This is how it's brought. He came in, he like just at the hour of need where everyone's about to die, he just murdered everyone and it bounced. I'm like, perfect. And I was kind of hoping that the show, instead of going he has to be the star, I hope that it was kind of like the Black Panther philosophy, where like he's going to be there, but everyone else is going to be the main characters. He's just going to be there when he needs to be there. And my concern is if you're relying on him to be the badass 24/7, like he loses kind of the sheen of a character that just basically is awesome all the time. Because Master Chief is awesome all the time, and eventually, how can you? It's like for similar problems to what Superman has to deal with. If Superman can solve every problem, he's awesome. Eventually, how can you make it difficult for Master Chief? Because Master Chief seemingly can do anything and everything. So it's like I'd rather use him sparingly when pull in case of emergency, rather than use him every single time, because that's what the show's going to be. And even the Mandalorian, where we talk all the time, like he gets beat up and stuff, it's fine because if he was perfect, like I assume what Master Chief's going to be, it would be really awful. Like there's no, I guess, threat of him ever getting hurt or being injured because he's Master Chief. Maybe even blowing up a Halo ring would be the only way you could kill him, and even then he didn't die. Yeah. So I don't know. We in the chat we talked about before. We all felt that when the news came out that they needed a secondary showrunner for season 2, we're like, oh, that can't bode well. But I think regardless of which, they're pot committed to Halo, so they're going to do another season. It's just a matter of, is this going to be continuation of the rich history of the show? Because Andre talks about the Forerunners and the Covenant and all that other thing. Like, there's so much more to do, and right now it's just the tip of the iceberg. Whether they can continue doing the weird stuff, or they're just going to go on their own path. Because clearly, after episode 1, they could do anything they want. John, do you care if they go on this? Like, if they just went. Because we saw the article, Rob shared it on our chat about how they're like, oh, we didn't even read any of the Halo stuff. We're just going to do our own thing. Does that matter to you, or?
I'm the wrong person because I'm not invested at all. So I thought in theory, yeah, you should bank on the existing fans and please those guys, and like a couple properties in, then that's when you start kind of calling the audibles and start going, oh, we're going to do it darker. We're going to do this weird Vertigo kind of style take. We're going to do all this. So I do find it an odd call on their part, and especially for them to come out and just state it for the fans to hear it. It's almost basically saying, we don't give a shit what you think. We're just going to do our thing, right? So it's kind of a weird thing to put out there in the ether, you know?
I feel like, to your point, I feel like they learned from what Paul Benetti said, where he was like, I've always wanted to work with this actor. And then everyone went crazy, like, who is this thing? I think they're damage control saying, hey, this is not Andre. This is to you. This is the show. And Andre now is saying, I can now watch this with clarity. You've told me already this is not for me. I'm going to watch it, and I'm good with this. Because if they would have said, it's a show, Andre, you've always wanted, Andre would be just fuming, be like, this, they sold me something that's not true. Like the
so it's like advanced damage control
on the weekend.
Yeah.
He's promised it's going to be with Spider-Man, and I'm telling you right now, nothing in this movie is going to have anything to do with Spider-Man. So, John, you've been warned. Forewarned. Yeah. Rob, do you care? Like, to Andre's question about, continuity or who's this for? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not overly. I wasn't overly concerned or miffed at the the showrunner's comments that he wasn't going. I think he just is a really shitty way of putting it. I think what he probably was trying to say is that we weren't going to be hampered by the storylines that were played in the game, because when you do that, it becomes you're a slave to the source material, and this is a giant world, which I think we all probably agree on. There's so much here you want to expand and explore on it, and if you're stuck riding the rails of what came before, then how do you do that? I just think he did a really shitty way of doing it. But who is this for? I think you're never going to please the hardcore gamers, the people who like Andre, who've got, volumes of the books and this and that. I think you're trying to appease as many eyeballs as possible. This is another streaming service that you're trying to get as many people to join. And if you're only aimed towards the hardcore Halo fans, it's a very niche area, and they likely subscribed anyways. You need to have it a bit more broad, that you're going to try to pull in as many as you can. I do, though, think, I played Halo, the original trilogy, and then obviously we know that Bungie was the original developer of the series. They sold it off to Microsoft, who developed the 343 Studios. And there, I think, and you guys could probably speak to this more on the game level, but I know when I played Halo 4, it felt different narratively than what the first couple of games did, and I kind of blame that on the Bungie no longer having control of that that property. So for me, going into this now, though, and seeing it, like, I'm like, what are you guys thinking, like, narratively, what are you guys doing? But I'm just like, well, it's not going to be what Halo Combat Evolved was, because that was lightning in a bottle. And not to shit all over the Destiny fans, but I played Destiny hoping it was Halo, and it wasn't. So, and I don't like Destiny. I don't like Destiny 1 or 2. So I'd rather be going back to the original Halo. So all this to say in a roundabout way is that it's made, I think, for as many eyeballs as possible. If you like that genre, if you're a fan of The Mandalorian, hey, don't forget, season 1 had a lot. We were kind of queasy on a lot of aspects of season 1. And then we all kind of enjoyed season 2 a lot more. So maybe there's more to this. Season 2 might be better, but we're only on episode 1 of this, so we'll see how we feel after episode 8.
But we always talk about the episode 1 being, this is usually their best effort. This is their best. This is typically the only chance you'll get to get continued viewership, especially this model of releasing once a week. If it was bad and we were okay, I'll binge and watch the other one next. But if it's weekly, then if it's bad, it's gonna fall off, and we're just like, we're not going back to it. So it's one of those things. I'm curious just how in the next week it will be in the zeitgeist. Like, I'll be interested to find out later on from John and Andre when people go to the stores. Like, did anyone is even talking about this show?
No, we're talking about Moon Knight.
Yeah, like, other than like, Andre, I know you love Halo. Give me your thoughts. And then I'd like the retort question from Andre to be like, are you going to watch Halo? And they're like, yeah, I don't think so. Like, I'm just curious to how many people are going to ask you, Andre, but not really themselves care at all about the property. Because I think people care about what you say, but in terms of them spending their own free moment in time, they'll be like, yeah, I think I'm okay. And yeah, I don't know what this show, who it's for. I don't know, like, the violence is a little too extreme. Like, Amblin, like, this is Steven Spielberg's company. Like, I figured, like, they would have a grip on storytelling. But again, I just don't know. I think Halo Combat Evolved is, again, Rob said, lightning a bottle. And I guess you can't tell a story where it's a first-person shooter for 6 hours about one person killing 1,000 Covenant people in a gunfight, and then all of a sudden stopping, and then a Cortana scene, and then the next scene's running through a ship, killing 1,000 people, and stop, and another scene. So I can see why they would have to change up the storylines, because really, Master Chief is pretty like by himself in the first game outside of Cortana. Like, he doesn't really interact.
But
Andre,
I think
really,
that's exactly the point, right?
Yeah.
Like, for the showrunners to talk about, oh yeah, we looked at the characters of Halo, and I'm like, okay, that's super interesting, because the characters don't have any character until you get to Halo Reach, and Master Chief isn't even in that.
Yeah.
Other than up until that point, Master Chief follows orders and does what he needs to do. And you don't know anything about him. And where do you get the tidbits about him? Oh, did you read the novel? Did you watch the live action trailer for the game or whatever? That's where you got this information. So for them to say, yeah, we like the idea of the characters and we're gonna dig into them and flesh into them, that's great. But you have to dig into all that other source material. Other than, if not, then you are just legit creating something totally new. And that's kind of what they said. Oh, this is the Silver timeline. This is its own timeline. It's inspired by Halo, but it's not the Halo you know. So they could have chosen, like you said, Stu, tell a different story about another military group or another single Spartan or another, thing. And maybe the Master Chief is the season finale and then the season opener of the next one, and it's like, it's how do these guys intersect? Like, one of the most interesting
nobody would have watched that.
Hmm?
Nobody would have watched that. If you were watching a show called Halo and there was no Master Chief, you would have been like, this is bullshit.
No, but Rob, I think that's the thing. You would have to call it something else. Like, you wouldn't call it just Halo. It could have been called UNSC, Marines or whatever, or the Office of Naval Intelligence, and it could be, who wouldn't watch a show that had Spartans doing Black Ops stuff, like the stuff that Master Chief wasn't doing? These guys like, oh, we got to take out this Covenant base, and then you could get to know that group of people, and every now and again, like, okay, we've got to intersect with the Master Chief and give him cover. Kind of like, again, you didn't play ODST, but there's all this other stuff you could do, and then you make interesting characters. Like,
but you're a fan of Sorry.
In Halo Reach, we didn't know any of those Spartans, but those guys all took off their helmets. They were a team, and they each had a distinct personality. So as they each died, you're like, oh, damn, I feel that. And I've only been playing the game for however many hours it is, right?
Spoilers for Halo Reach.
That's the stuff that's all, kind of built in. And there's so many novels that don't deal with the Chief and all that, because they wanted to leave that for the main games to tell the Chief's story. And you're absolutely right. You're not going to just have a two-season show of a guy running around shooting stuff, but to then arbitrarily create all this other stuff, and then, like I said, oh, he's going to take off his helmet, and he's going to not follow orders right away, and this and that. It just seems like, okay, you're telling a story of a Master Chief, but it's not the Master Chief that anybody who knows Halo is thinking of. And again, if you just were to scroll past the show and you go, oh, there's a new sci-fi show called Halo, how many people are checking in without having any prior knowledge to it? Like, I could get the wife to watch Star Trek with me and Picard. I don't think I'd get her to watch a Halo show, no matter how good they put secondary characters and human characters and all that stuff in. It's just like, oh, this is based on your game that you're running around shooting people. Like.
Well, then
I don't think there's enough
a movie
in just calling it Halo, other than we want 20 years of fan following. There's millions of people that could put eyes on it, and maybe they're like, hey, if Andre watches it and doesn't like it, he's still talking about it, and somebody else will come in and judge. But then they're literally just using the name. They're just using the name to hopefully draw people in without saying, hey, yeah, we could use something else other than the name, because there's tons to use, right?
And they should have made a movie and then had offshot TV show to deal with these side characters, much like we're probably going to be getting with Dune, and they've already announced the Benny Jesuit show on HBO Max.
Well, they did the other Halo show. There was Forward Onto Dawn, and then there was the other short with the guy who played Luke Cage to introduce Locke, right? So again, those are the type of stories you tell. Yeah, you're telling a story in the Halo universe, and there's all this stuff going on. And if it's good or it keeps building up, you could be like, yeah, we're going to spend some money on this show. We're going to go to different places. So the people that played the game might be like, oh, I'm interested to see what, so-and-so's, what this off thing is, like, could you imagine if they did, I know he might be a little bit older, but you get, what's his name? Who played Buck from, Nathan Fillion. Could you imagine? He's like, oh, he could tell my memoirs as an ODST, and he's the narrator and he's just talking about his adventures. People would watch that. People would eat that up. And because he's got his helmet on most of the time, you don't have to have actually Nathan Fillion doing all the stunts and all of that stuff. There's ways to do it.
Records at home.
Have to change everything that exists about your game universe, right?
I think there's a lot of, like, to your point, Rob, you said it in other podcasts, we're in an epidemic of, like, you have to create content for streaming services, and like our other one, like, well, we have Paramount Plus, we pay a lot of money, we have this title of Halo, we can't just make a TV show that doesn't have Halo in it. Who's going to watch a show called, like Halo Marine Chronicles without Master Chief? Like, if you're going to spend the money, and they spent a lot of money to get licensing deals, you got to go full Monty. You got to go have Master Chief in it, or no one's going to watch it. Like you said, no one cares about that stuff. And the true nerds who love, like, again, Nathan Fillion as a character, like, again, how many people are there? Like, who knows? So I think it's they have to really swing for the fences, and if it's popular, they can branch out just like the Arrowverse. But if not, then it's going to be a one and done, probably 2 seasons, and we'll see what happens. John, you already mentioned you are going to potentially watch more episodes, right? You're going to watch more. Are you down for more episodes? You're going to watch the entire thing?
Yeah. I'll watch. For some reason, I like the aesthetic of it. This kind of like 80s, 90s feel to it. Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely going to check out more episodes. But I'm not like itching at, like, I don't need them like right now. I'll watch them when they drop next week.
Rob, are you going to watch more, or are you going to wait to the end, or what are you going to weekly?
Yeah, I do like to usually binge like all the things. I'll probably do it weekly. We'll see. Next week we have Moon Knight coming out on Wednesdays, and this is on Thursdays. So, I might not watch it on Thursdays. Maybe I'll throw it on like on a Saturday night before I, whatever. So,
Andre, did you watch it with your son?
No, I watched it during. So, for me to be able to watch it today, I watched it during lunch. So, I asked him if he wanted to watch, and he's like, "Yeah, okay." So, unfortunately, with Paramount Plus, there's only I have the Apple TV, and I can't really watch it anywhere else, and that's only under one TV. Everything else is Alexa, so we can only kind of watch it under one TV. I have more TVs than I know what to do with in my house, but only one plays.
But he's mad. But he's basically like, I'll watch it. He wasn't like,
he's like, yeah, all right, yeah.
Which does say something.
His first game was Halo 3, so he is somewhat invested in wanting to watch it.
But he wasn't like, I gotta watch this right now, right? So
yeah. Andre, are you gonna watch more of this, or wait till the end?
Yeah, you know what? I'll probably watch the second one, and see, and then I think by then I'll know. Like, I know it's only 8 episodes.
Andre will know as soon as Cortana shows up, and he's like, I'm out. Andre is in as long as before Cortana shows up, and she's not blue. Be like, hey, caramba.
Well, I heard they were changing her again, so she might end up being blue. But in a way, I'm more curious to see what that clone thing was and how the hell they try and tell that story. You know what I mean? Like, it's just very. I think they're just, like I said, they took something that was pretty simple and they just said, oh, for the sake of making it different, we've got to now tie ourselves up in knots to make it different. And I think that's what kills me about adaptations. If it worked one way, keep it simple, stupid, right? It's just like, don't mess with a good thing.
Andre's never worked in corporate America, because if it's a good idea and it wasn't my idea, we can't go forward with it, Andre. I got to do my idea, and because it's better. See, Rob's idea was nice and quaint, but you know what's better? my idea. And when that goes wrong, it's John's fault. That's how it works in corporate America. Yep, this is it. You're welcome, world. John, Andre, where can they find you on the internet in the desert of the real?
Yeah, so I'll take care of the online stuff. So online, Heroes World Online, our Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and our website. All Heroes World Online takes you there. And then if you're listening to this on the audio, Heroes World Podcast on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, Andre will hit you up with where you can visit us in person.
Yeah, so you can visit us in the Desert of the Real, our physical store location, 8601 Warden Avenue. Lots and lots of great stuff in store for you, from trade paperbacks, comic books, board games, miniature games. There's something for everybody to do. Card games are making a comeback. Digimon is really, really great. Pokemon on fire, Magic the Gathering. So it's springtime. You want to get out there and do something, come and check us out, and we'll hook you up.
Rob, what's happening on the Sidekick Show?
Thanks for asking, Stu. So this Monday, 8:15 live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, John and I are going to be bringing our 5 most rewatchable movies. And we're not talking about the ones that we've talked about here. There's no Winter Soldier. There's no Interstellar. There's no John's favorite My Little Pony from the 86 movie. We're not bringing those. We're bringing the ones that, you know, that we haven't talked about. You know, maybe there's a Breakfast Club in there. We're going to take a look and we're going to find out. So definitely join us and bring your 5 movies. What are movies that you will just throw on any day of the week? So that's John and I on the Heroes World Sidekick Show Monday night, 8:15 live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us on our Halo journey. Hopefully Moon Knight, when we talk about that, will be much more fun. We're all super excited for that bad boy. And I as soon as I heard on one of the articles that Oscar Isaac used the performance of Carl Pilkington as his homage, he's like, I want to be like Carl. I'm in. And those who know Ricky Gervais know Carl.
An idiot abroad.
Idiot abroad. And the fact that he's like, that's my spirit animal, that's my guy, I'm like, this show's going to be amazing. So thank you, everyone. See you all later.